I invite you to connect with the voices of the Bible as we listen to God's word today from Jeremiah 36. This passage from Jeremiah takes us to a dramatic moment in ancient Judah's history, a story about words that couldn't be destroyed, even when a king tried to burn them away. Now, to understand what's happening, we need to travel back to around 605 BCE. The Babylonian Empire looms as a threat to Judah. King Jehoiakim sits on the throne in Jerusalem, a ruler installed by foreign powers who focus more on luxury than leadership. He built an impressive palace using forced labor while the nation faced crisis. In this tense environment, God instructs the prophet Jeremiah to create a scroll containing all the warnings and messages that had been delivered over many years. The timing is significant. God directs this scroll to be written in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, which marked a turning point in regional power as Babylon defeated Egypt at Carchemish, changing the political landscape entirely. Jeremiah, unable to enter the temple himself, dictates these prophecies to his secretary Baruch, who then reads them publicly during a day of fasting when people from throughout Judah have gathered in Jerusalem. The scroll's message wasn't simply about coming punishment. Notice verse 3. Perhaps when the people of Judah hear about every disaster I plan to inflict on them, they will each turn from their wicked ways. Then I will forgive their wickedness and their sin. Even in warning, God's purpose remains restoration and forgiveness. When the scroll reaches the king during winter, he's sitting in his heated winter apartment with a fire burning nearby. As each portion is read, Jehoiakim does something shocking. He cuts that section off with a knife and throws it into the fire, continuing until the entire scroll is destroyed. This wasn't a momentary outburst, but a deliberate, systematic rejection of God's message. 3 officials plead with him not to burn the scroll, showing some still recognized its importance. But the king not only destroys the message, he attempts to silence the messengers by ordering the arrest of both Jeremiah and Baruch. What happens next reveals the heart of this story. God instructs Jeremiah to create another scroll containing everything from the first one, plus additional words. Now, this seemingly simple detail carries profound significance. Truth cannot be permanently silenced. What the king tried to destroy returned even stronger. This story speaks powerfully to our lives today in several ways. First, it challenges us to examine how we respond when confronted with difficult truths. Do we, like Jehoiakim, try to eliminate messages that make us a little or a lot uncomfortable? Or do we listen, even when the truth challenges our perspective or requires change? Second, it reminds us that attempting to silence truth never works long term. In our digital age, people try to suppress information, discredit the messenger, or create distractions to avoid facing reality. But like that second scroll, truth has a persistent quality that outlasts our resistance. Third, this passage reveals something about God's character, a commitment to communication that won't be thwarted by human rejection. The divine message wasn't silenced by fire, it expanded. This persistence reflects God's deep desire for relationship and restoration. In practical terms, this story invites us to develop what we might call scroll-receiving hearts, rather than scroll-burning reactions. This means creating space for reflection when uncomfortable truths confront us, rather than immediate rejection. Building relationships with people who will speak honestly to us, even when their words challenge us. Practicing humility that recognizes our perspective is limited and remains open to correction. And remembering that even difficult truths are offered in service of growth and restoration. The book of Jeremiah ultimately shows how the scroll's warnings came true. Jerusalem fell to Babylon as predicted. But it also contains promises of restoration and a new covenant written on hearts rather than stone. The story didn't end with destruction, and neither does ours. When we receive rather than reject truth, it creates pathways toward healing and renewal, both personally and in our communities. I invite you to reflect this week. Where might you be resisting truth that needs to be heard? What would change if you approached challenging messages with openness rather than defensiveness? Remember, God's persistent voice speaks not to condemn, but to transform and restore.